Hi, I'm Hannah, your behavior analyst on the Spero podcast, and I guess show is Q&A. Now, specifically, this is for parents and for the neurodiverse community, but anyone's welcome, right? Because at some point, we're probably a parent or caring for someone, or the number of people that are neurodivergent and those stats, we can talk another day. You could even be walking around and be neurodivergent sometimes or on the borderline. So, message, we'll shop talk. But this first episode in April, for when it's being recorded, is April is the month of autism awareness, basically, right? And I didn't want to jump on the bandwagon, but I did want to bring up some things just to create awareness and give an opportunity for people to ask questions. I'm having tech issues. So hopefully my video, audio are working. But also, if you send me messages and I miss them now, I will post and answer them because I want this to be a space that you can get your questions answered. Like, why not have access to behavior analysts? And if I don't have an answer, I'll find someone that does. Like, that's the whole point of networking and knowing people, right? Because you can only know so much as one person. We got to go talk to other people to learn more. Anyways, I digress as usual. But let's talk about autism. And I'm going to use some of the Facebook posts I've seen. I've joined neurodiverse groups and parenting and providers and all of these, and I'm noticing some trends. And I wanted to address some of them because likely if one person has a question, more people have. And I recently saw a post, but oh, let me not forget. I wanted to go over explaining autism a little bit, like how I explain what it is. And then there's conflict about this diagnosis and how to live and what to do about it. And I wanted to bring that up because some people just don't know. I didn't know until a couple of years ago that this was even a thing. And then I wanted to bring in parenting because the Q&A is for parents because parenting's hard enough. And then you throw neurodiversity in there when you're neurotypical and your brain just explodes. You're like, I don't know what to do. But we'll talk about some different things. But hopefully it'll give you some things to think on that either you can use or you can share with someone else. So let's start with what is autism? This is how I explain autism or honestly any neurodiversity to my own kiddo, other kids in schools, because I know I've worked in schools before as a one-on-one aide with a child that's neurodiverse because I've been doing this a little while, been in a few places with a few people. And so I I remember the first time someone explained it, and it was a teacher. She's amazing. I always wanted my daughter to go to like this teacher. She's just fantastic. But I loved how she explained when another classmate asked about the student I was with and said, "Why do they always have a helper? Why do they have a person there? Like in this kid's brain, that's not what you typically see." And I love that the teacher said, "Hey, you know how some people need glasses? Some people need wheelchairs. Some people need hearing aids. We all need different things, and your friend just needs someone to help them in school. We all need different things." And I love that perspective because I like to bring back, and if you want to zoom out to neurodiversity in general, and I talked about this before, so I'll keep it short. um, Neurodiversity is I like looking at if our fingerprints are not identical on our own body, if our ears on our own body are non identical, if people see colors completely different with the same lighting, the same setting, the same everything external, how could our brains be completely identical? Like it's just a theory. I'm not anything neuro. I like learning about the brain because that's where all your actions come from. They pour over from what happens in the brain. Most of us can't survive without the brain. But that's how recently, and this is true story. So from my own life. So if you think it's um, TMI, you can skip and go along. If it helps you on your journey, hopefully it will. So I have two kids, 9 and 3 right now. And my 9-year old, so she's been having a hard time with school for a while. So I love that her current school advocated and said, hey, let's do some assessments. I said, yes, let's do that because I wasn't able to take the medical route. And I have theorize, and all my friends theorize that I'm somewhere on the spectrum with ADHD. Probably am, but I use a lot of behavioral coping things in life every day. So to help me live the life I want. And, life's a journey, we're all learning. But she got assessed, and then there was a meeting. Well, I should have known this because I've worked in schools long enough. There was a date set for the review of the assessments. And I walked in, and there's like a bunch of people. And I was late because I had a meeting that just went late. And I walked in, I was like, oh, shoot, this is an IEP, and I didn't even know this. Here we are. It was a scrambly time of life. So we had the meeting, and my daughter heard the word disabilities. And I hadn't had a talk with her to explain really how people are different. She's mentioned like friends in class that might do things, and the way she described it was highly repetitive. And I just told her different people have different interests, and that's okay. Because we're all a little bit different. Then she brought up, I said, did you have any questions from that meeting? Because I did not prep her. I should have. If I was being a good behavior analyst and a fantastic parent, I would have primed her and been aware of everything, but I wasn't. I was trying to survive at that time. If you listen to my other episodes, it was when I was working in a toxic environment. It's not the blame, but that's just one variable that was at play. So not top of everything. And so we're driving home, and I'm asking her if she has any questions, and she brings up disability. And I explained her similar how I've done on the show, similar as that teacher did, how everyone's brain is wired differently, and how sometimes school settings are not helpful to everyone. Like we have like our curriculum in our setting, not to say anything against schools, but there is a protocol you have to follow and a system you have to follow. Just like every business has a different system, it's similar but different. As schools have an expected system. So and not everyone fits in that system perfectly. And that's okay. And I said that meeting is to help her so that she can learn more easily. And we kind of dropped it after that. And she hasn't asked any questions. But that's how I explained it is we're all a little bit different. And this is just a system that doesn't fit everyone. So we're doing everything we can to help her. And that's how I explain it. Now, autism specifically versus other diagnoses, I've seen the oddest things on TikTok. Love TikTok. It's fun stuff. But I remember somebody saying, hold up your fingers, right? Hold up 10 fingers. And if you have all 10 fingers down, they finish the questions. And then she goes, you probably have autism. And I was like, what? It had nothing to do with the DSM 5, and there's a new version. I just can't remember the name of it. For the diagnosis, it had nothing to do with that. And so there's false things going around about what autism is. When I first entered the field, it was based on 3 criteria of differences, but there's a long list now. I don't do diagnoses. My previous guest on my other show, she can actually diagnose. I'm not trained to do that. Just so you know, behavior analysts are not certified to diagnose for autism or any other diagnosis. That's not within our parameters is to diagnose. Now we can look at a person, see what their values are, their strengths or weaknesses, all those variables, see any diagnoses or not, and just design treatment ideally to empower them to live the lives they want based on behavior analytic principles. And again, applied behavior analysis is not the only way. There's a lot of success stories in other fields of treatment. But I digress again. But on the Spero show and Q&A and moment, I'm always going to digress a little bit because sometimes you just go with the flow of things, right? And that's harder to do. But anyways, so that's how I explain what autism is, how we do things differently. And if people talk about, well, they do these same things over and over. Well, look at whoever it is you're thinking of or what you've seen. It boils down to basic human needs. When you do something, you don't do it for no reason at all. We always have a reason for what we're doing. You don't like itch under your chin on your neck because I have a friend once that was like, hey, if you go like itch your nose like this in a work meeting, everyone around the table, And I don't know if she like made eye contact too to get other people to check their nose. We all do. She was doing it for fun, but other people would be responding and wonder if something's on their nose. So we all do something for a reason. Even if we argue that we don't, ultimately you'll find out. Like I blew up. I did something dumb a couple weeks ago because, life's a journey. I did something done and it overflowed because of an emotion and a perspective I had inside of me. So if you see someone repeating something, they're getting something out of it that meets their needs as a human. And you can boil back to the four why factors, and then those are tied to specific emotions and perspectives and all of those pieces. So that's just something to take into account. And also I like to look at humans being a vase filled with water as like the quote unquote perfect things you should be doing as a human, right? I don't think there's actually a perfect. And the less water that vase has, because that's be all filled, is filled with dirt, quote unquote, habits we wish we didn't do or would not like to do, but we do them anyways because we have a basic human need. And in order to get it out, you got to flush it out with more water. That's how you get the dirt out. And so I look at, if you want to change someone's habits, give them a habit they would like to do instead. Or, like often, if I'm treating clients who cannot communicate what they need, I figure out what they're getting out of that action and help them find a safer way to do it, to stay safe, protect their limbs, um, all of those pieces. You got to take that into account. There's a lot of variables, value, society. But, anyways, that's kind of how I explain it. And I am technically neurotypical, so I'm not explaining it from a perspective with the diagnosis. But hopefully, this maybe bridges the way we communicate about it. And it's a beautiful thing because when your brain is not strong in some areas, it's wicked strong in others. Like memory, I wish I could mm, quote things like my some of my clients. I'm like, dude, I can't even remember the names of things, and I'm supposed to know what I'm talking about. And it's just there's such a beauty in neurodiversity. I have a friend who came on a previous episode, and he's neurodivergent, and the art he makes is beautiful. It may not exist if his brain was wired like the neurotypical population. So there's beauty and all the crazy people that invent, or quote unquote crazy, right? That invented things were highly likely not neurotypical. Our world would not be what it is with just neurotypical people. So there's a beauty in it. But obviously, we want to help keep people safe and things like that. But there is conflict because even if you talk about staying safe, you have different levels of that, right? And so I heard somebody on the spectrum talking one time. An autistic was maybe in his early 20s at the time. This was years ago. And he talked about how he chews on hangers. Now, I don't know if the hangers were metal or plastic. I can't remember that. But he chews on them in his dorm room. Now, some people might be like, oh my word, that's not safe. He wasn't harming himself. I'm I don't know what's happening to his dental care. You might need to find some variables to help protect that so he doesn't lose his teeth before old age. That would just be, you know, and he's doing it in his dorm room. Now, some people might say, oh, but he's masking. He's putting it, from what I understand of masking. He's only doing it in the dorm room. Well, we do other things. I just had a talk with my daughter today about clothing. She has these gym shorts and they're a size too big because we accidentally bought one too big. But she's growing like a weed, so we'll be fine. But they ride up, and I'm worried. I'm like, I just don't want people seeing, upper shorts. And we had a conversation today because she's not understanding why she can wear those shorts at the gym. Because I'm like, I don't care as long as no one can see anything. You're running around. But in school, when she's sitting there for long periods, I'm like, you don't need to have clothes that they're breathable like that. And I had to have the conversation of how when I do a work meeting, I specifically dress like, for example, if my shirt is shorter, I'll wear higher waisted pants to not expose my stomach. And I said, it's not because I don't care. I said, it's just more of an expectation. And sometimes you dress for your environment. And in a sense, it's more professional for women not to show their stomachs in the American culture. So I'm okay abiding by that their rule. There's other rules. I told her there's other rules I break. Like I like tank tops, so I'm gonna wear a stinking tank top when it's 90 degrees outside. Or there's this rule about closed-toed shoes. I don't know where it came from. If anybody knows where it came from, I'm like, why do we have to wear closed-toed shoes? What's the deal with shoe tie? That's just me and my preferences and my perspective. I play by the rules when I'm supposed to. But having that conversation of expectations of society, we all have those conversations at some point, somewhere, if we're wanting to help people around us or help us understand. Um, so the conflict in the field is how do you address stereotypy, which would be repetitive actions, or because part of the diagnosis is you'll see an excess. Now, people might say, "Oh my goodness, my child is, 2 and they're repeating an action." We as humans repeat things because we get something out of it. But as you're developing, you typically find new things to repeat and you don't keep repeating the same thing. And that's part of developmental delay concept is in a sense you get just stuck in that cycle because your needs get met and you don't see the need to go further. But there's conflict between the autistics and ABA because there have been times when ABA has been used wrong. I know that it's a new field, we're making mistakes. Now I'm advocating highly for human focus. You need to put I don't like saying person centered because it's overused, but it's human focus. We're looking at the human. What do they need as a person to live empowered how they want to? And it's not for us to judge that. If they want to have an excessive behavior, we all have one, okay? Just name it. We all have our excessive behavior, our binge moments, our whatever you want to call them, to get our needs met. Who is it to us to say uh, that the autistic community is saying the ABA has harmed them and they don't see the autistics for who they are. And that I've seen some of what's happened. It's not been good. But I've also seen amazing moments where when I just talk to my person that I'm working with who is neurodivergent, whether it's IDD or mental health type of diagnosis, so where you're wired differently. And the hope and the light that comes on in their face and their eyes when they realize there is a possibility of getting something better. Like I had a client once and I was like, you don't have to keep doing that because he was all upset about this one thing. And from his perspective, he didn't think he did the behavior. And that's fair. Your own self awareness is its own world. But the other people present thought it was like, not verbal aggression, but something else like just harmful, like a very abrasive verbally. And I was explaining to him, you may not see it that way, but other people do. And he was all worried about, continuing this behavior. And I was like, dude, you don't have to keep doing that. And I still remember the look on his face. Like, I don't remember his exact words. I just remember like his whole demeanor shifted. He was like, wait, I don't have to. It's like, no, we can talk about what you could do instead. Even if you don't feel like you're doing it, if you would like to do something else instead, we can. Like, that's why I'm here, is to help you on this journey. And another time, I saw this little girl that we'd been working with for at least 6 months, and insurance had been like, they're not making progress. She doesn't need services. And she'd had a lot of clinicians work with her over the years. We overhauled everything. And I happened to be leaving because I had to leave the clinical field because I couldn't do the ABA corporate world because it's not human focused. And the light on her face when she started playing with toys and she had just started playing, just that joy, that light that came on her face, that makes everything worth it. And if you keep your human first, it doesn't really matter, not really matter, but as long as that's the focus of what you're doing, things can change and you have to be open to that. So both the ABA field needs to be aware of what is harmful and not and take that into account. And no field's perfect. It's not. I'm not in like conferences with like doctors or psychiatrists or anything like that. So I don't know what their fields look like, but and in the ABA field, yeah, there's a lot of changes that need to be happened, but we can start talking about it and then putting in strategies. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm like, let's stop talking about it. Let's do something. But anyways, there is conflict on how you should treat the characteristics the autistics engage in that neurotypicals deem inappropriate. I think we should talk about that, figure out the whys, understanding, and come to a win win on both sides as long as we hear each other out and not just talk at each other. We actually hear what each other needs and what we want to do. We can make a difference that way. Don't they say teamwork makes the dream work? Anyways, so you have the diagnosis itself. You have the conflict on what do you do, and then I wanted to bring in, and this is what I really want to spend most time on, but it's okay. Uh, Parents. Let's say you're a neurotypical parent, and your child is about to be or has just been diagnosed with ASD, autism. I saw a post the other day, and it broke my heart in the sense that, like, often when I do treatment, the parents have had the diagnosis for a little while. But I noticed that in this new diagnosis, there is a grieving of dreams. And it made me step back and think because I think clinicians need to understand more of the grieving processes that comes with a diagnosis. Now, what is the grieving about? It made me actually think about other major instances in life where you have an expectation of something, like you've birthed a child, you've gotten married, whatever that you step out on expecting this to be your path, and you have hope in it, and all of a sudden your life path is it like, I don't know what the streets are called that are like you can't go straight anymore, you got to go left, you got to go right. It's not a dead end because you got to go somewhere. um you have a choice. And I was talking about this in moments, like you have a choice. And if not, I was thinking about it because I've been going through the realization of how much power we have in our choices. Now, I have heard men and women grieve differently. I don't understand all the science of the nuances with that, so I'll have to chat with someone about those details. But when you get a diagnosis, maybe you already thought there was one because that's why you're trying to get it. Now, often people get it because sometimes just having a name to something gives you a sense of peace. But also, in our current medical field, you have to have a diagnosis to access any funding. Now, there are all the caveats about how all the red tape with funding like goes against you. Anyways, but it made me realize that sometimes when you're getting a diagnosis with your child, you are not necessarily grieving your child, but of the loss of what you thought your child would have, the possibilities. And you also have to kind of swallow the fact that you're going to have to do more because you feel like you have to stand up for your kids. And I'm translating this not because of a child who's been diagnosed, but in relation to divorce. And there actually are high statistics that if your child is diagnosed, there's really high statistics on divorce rates. So, because then you have to look at kind of like accepting divorce in the sense of like if you didn't want it and it was not your life plan, you have a choice. You can either go one way and you own up to what the new path is and you flip it into something amazing, or you go the other way and you don't see the beauty in it, and you could be angry and you can go bitter, and sometimes you go that way and then you come over to the positive way. Sometimes you have a mini, like, you kind of like just stay there for a little while. And every parent who has a child diagnosed is probably going to be on, they're either waiting to make that choice because they don't know yet, they're all gung-ho, they're going forward, but it doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And the thing is even if you're looking at whatever major life situation, when it's thrown at you, even if you have a choice, either choice is hard. Whether you get a diagnosis or not, it's still a hard path. Whether your child is neurotypical or neurodiverse, parenting itself is still hard. Relationships are still hard, but it's a matter of finding the good in it. And that's not easy. That takes a long time. So I think I wanted to bring this up because just the parenting aspect of parenting, it really is no joke that they say it takes a village to raise a kid. But when you're parenting and you need resources, if you're a parent and you're not sure if your child is and you just need some support, feel free to follow or check out any of the resources that I have. I want to be a resource because you can feel lost because maybe you're not familiar with the system. It's like getting into this whole new field of work. You don't know when you take a new job, you know how your brain just melts because you're like, oh, I want this. But the world of getting supports for your child, whichever route you take, you still have that's just more to do on your plate, is often, I think, what parents see. But there's also other pieces that one thing I keep coming back to, and again, I tie this to major things that happen in my own life, is not just if you're a parent of neurodiverse, but just major instances, is there is something there that you would have not been able to see without it. And what I hear a lot from parents who have older children who have been diagnosed is seeing the world in a way that they would have never seen it if their child was neurotypical. And that's the thing, that although it's a lot more work with, you know, the whatever patterns of habits your kid gets into, that, you're not sure. And there's confusion too. I hear a lot of parents say, is this like autism or is this just being a kid? And you have a lot of just being a kid mixed in there, that it's just parenting. But I hope that with this month of autism awareness, even if it's like a family member, maybe you have a sibling that their child was diagnosed and you didn't understand what they were going through. If you can tie it to when you remember a time in life that you were given a card of saying, like let's say life is a deck of cards and you get what you draw. Sometimes you get to draw and sometimes you get to ask for it and say, go fish. But a lot of times we're given our cards and we're like, shoot, how can I turn this into a good hand? And the magic of life is that you can always take that card and flip it. But I think also we can understand what other people are going through when we've been through our own grief of different things as well, because there's always something to learn, and there's always some, you never know why things are going to happen the way they are. You can just take the information you have at the moment to make that choice. So hopefully this is helpful, especially for parents or those of you who have friends of parents of children who may be diagnosed with ASD, that there's always beauty in everything, but sometimes we just got to look for it a little bit. And we got to be there for each other, because yeah, parenting's just hard. But it's a beautiful thing that none of us would give up. So like, but tune in. We're going to be on Tuesdays at 2 Mountain Standard Time here for Q&A for parents and the neurodiverse population. Just a space to ask questions. If I can't get your questions in the show, I will get to them after. But I would love to see you again. Subscribe. Check out my socials, hspero.show. You can email me, hsparrowllc@gmail.com if you need anything. And I will see you again soon.